District Attorney for Sonoma County. This forum is co-sponsored by the Sonoma County Bar Association and the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County. My name is Alice Richardson, a proud member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be the moderator for this event. The forum is being taped by Community Media Center Santa Rosa and will be shown on KRCB TV, our local PBS station, and on Comcast Santa Rosa's community access channels. More information about when the broadcast will take place are on tables in the lobby. And those tables are also where campaign material is placed. And we thank you for putting the material there. And if you haven't seen those tables, be sure to check them out on your way at the end of the program. Before we get started, here is a brief word about the League of Women Voters. By the way, the League is celebrating our 90th anniversary. We were formed in 1920 when women got the right to vote. So happy birthday to us. We are called the League of Women Voters, but we have many, many men in our organization too, so think about it, you fellas out there. According to our mission statement, the League is a nonpartisan political organization. It encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. We do, however, take action on selected government issues in the public interest. Okay, now is the big time. Now is the time for everybody with any kind of electronic device, whether it be on your person, in your purse, in your pocket, in your briefcase, wherever, please put it on vibrate or off. We'd like to have these proceedings uninterrupted from now on. We welcome our two candidates to this forum, Stephan Passalacqua and Jill Ravitch. We met beforehand to determine who will go first with the opening statements, and Jill, Ms. Ravitch was first, and then Mr. Passalacqua will go second. We'll go back and forth throughout the forum so that the same person doesn't answer first all the time. And we will reverse it so that the person who went first with their opening statement will then go, last. Opening and closing statements are 2 minutes each. So just to give you more information how the evening will flow. First, we'll have the opening statements by the candidates, and then there will be 2 question and answer periods. In the first portion, I will ask questions from a list of questions developed by the co-sponsors. Then it's your turn. When you entered, you were given the opportunity to take a 3x5 card. And if you have a question already prepared, please write it down. And our card collectors on either side of these aisles will collect them and then bring them up to me, and as time permits, we'll try to get as many answered as we can. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer my questions and yours. And if I feel a 30-second rebuttal is necessary, I reserve the right to make that happen. Since this forum is being taped for broadcast on television later, we obviously need to keep within a certain time limit. So we have 2 timekeepers extraordinaire right here in front, Amy Southwick and Andrea English, who will help us do that. We have a yellow card. There's our little famous yellow card that will be raised when you have 30 seconds left. And then the infamous red card that says stop. All right, so we will begin with Ms. Ravitch and then Mr. Passalacqua. Ms. Ravitch.
Thank you, and I want to thank the organizers of this event for giving us an opportunity to come out and talk about this important race. I'm running for District Attorney of Sonoma County because I believe that I have the best qualifications to get the job done. I'm a career trial attorney with over 22 years in the courtroom and over 100 jury trial convictions under my belt. I've been a prosecutor for most of those 22 years, 15 of them here in Sonoma County. I'm looking forward to coming back to Sonoma County and working with the other justice partners to ensure that this community is protected in a way that it deserves. The law enforcement community has lost confidence in my opponent, which is why all the police officer associations from Petaluma to Healdsburg have come out and endorsed my candidacy. I hope that as you listen to our answers throughout the course of the next hour or so, you're going to find that there's a reason that I'm running for district attorney, and I hope that you will agree with so many others that I am the best candidate to fill this job. We'll be talking about conviction rates, some of the lowest in the state. We'll be talking about a loss of confidence not only by police officer associations, but others who are familiar with the district attorney's office and the leadership. It's time for a change, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to bring in somebody who has a proven record in the courtroom as a prosecutor who can win tough cases, who understands how important it is to retain staff in the DA's office and shut the revolving door where we've lost over 30 prosecutors since my opponent took office. So I hope that you'll listen carefully to these questions. It's an important job that I'm seeking. The district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of this county, and I hope that by the end of the evening you'll agree with me that I'm the best candidate for the job. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. That was very nice, but in the interest of time, we're going to save our applause at the end, please. Thank you. Mr. Passalacqua.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Sonoma County Bar Association for hosting this debate here tonight. I'm fourth generation of Sonoma County, and my two young daughters inspire me every day to work hard and make our community safe. My entire career I've spent in the DA's office. And when I was first elected in 2002, I made three promises: to build a top-notch DA's office, to strengthen crime prevention programs, and ensure that the voice of victims was a cornerstone of my administration. I've kept those promises. Under my leadership, we have delivered results. We have a top-notch management team who excel. We have top-notch prosecutors who get fabulous results in the courtroom. In fact, last year alone, we had a 88% felony trial conviction rate. And during my leadership, our community is much safer than it was before. In fact, violent crime has dropped countywide from 2004 to 2008. And in Santa Rosa alone, there's been a 27% drop in violent crime. We've also partnered to reduce crime. In fact, we've partnered with the Santa Rosa Boys and Girls Club to keep kids out of gangs. We partner with community-based organizations, many leaders here today, to host elder protection forums, to arm our seniors with information to defend themselves against con artists who commit scams and fraud. We've also made sure that the voice of victims is heard loudly and clearly, not only in the courtroom, but in the community. This year, we opened up the Family Justice Center to help victims. I have a proven record, I have a strong record of getting the job done, and I look forward to another 4 years of serving you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to be asking some questions of both candidates, and don't forget, if something comes up that sparks your interest and you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand and our card runners will come to you, and then I will eventually get those cards, and we'll try to do as best we can with answering them. Okay, Mr. Passalacqua, you go first with the first question, and you have about a minute and a half to answer this. Name what you consider to be the successes of the District Attorney's Office over the last 4 years, and conversely, what do you think could have been handled differently or better?
Well, first of all, I'm extremely proud that we've been able to turn county retirements into an opportunity to hire the best and the brightest prosecutors here in the state of California. We've received local recognition by the Santa Rosa Chamber of Commerce for leadership in justice. We've received statewide recognition in 2005 and 2006 for having two of the top prosecutors in the state of California. This was the first time in 25 years that a DA's office had back-to-back recognition at the state level. I'm also very proud of the results in the courtroom. As I said, last year alone, we had an 88% felony trial conviction rate on our felony trials. And one of the things that is a fundamental difference between my opponent and I is I believe that there's more than just being a prosecutor. You have to be a community partner, and you have to be a champion of victims' rights. And we've done a fabulous job of partnering with the Santa Rosa Boys and Girls Club to keep our kids out of gangs. That program is a national proven model that is expanded now countywide. And we've also really have stepped it up quite a bit in helping seniors, because the fact of the matter is there are so many scams and con artists out there. And with these forums, we're giving information to help seniors defend themselves against the con artists who want to commit scams and fraud.
All right. Ms. Ravitch, and any time, if you want me to repeat the question, please tell me.
Well, it's kind of a tough question asking me what the success of my opponent's office has been, so you're asking me to basically laud him. And I will acknowledge that there are some outstanding prosecutors in that office that are toiling hard every day. But what is discouraging and what could have been handled better was how they were being supervised. This is an office that has expanded the number of managers. Since the incumbent has come in, he's added an assistant DA and he's added a chief DA. That's considerable expense to you. And of these 6 managers that he's surrounded himself with, they don't carry caseloads, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the chief deputy DA up in Mendocino County, where I've been for 2 years. I carry a full caseload. I supervise 15 attorneys. I tried 3 murder cases to conviction, as well as a home invasion robbery. You deserve having the experienced lawyers in the courtroom doing the work that you're paying them to do every day. Community outreach is important, but what's more important is effective prosecution once the case comes into the courtroom. Victim advocacy, absolutely important, but you have to gain the trust of the victim when you bring that individual into the court to testify. The focus needs to come out of community outreach, out of putting our prosecutors on the street, and back into the courtroom where they can be effective prosecutors representing us every day. I referenced the conviction rate. My opponent talks about an 88% jury trial conviction rate. Ask him how many trials he's talking about. I have to stop.
All right, and Ms. Ravitch, you will get the next question here. What do you consider to be your strengths as the potential Chief District Attorney in Sonoma County? And what areas do you think you might need to improve in order to become a more effective Chief District Attorney?
That's a little easier for me to answer. I think that my strengths lie in my courtroom experience. 22 years in the courtroom, handling all manner of cases, from DUIs to sexual assaults, domestic violence, special circumstance murder cases. I've also supervised other attorneys. I understand the skills necessary to be an effective prosecutor in the courtroom. I understand the skills necessary to work with law enforcement members to ensure that the investigations are conducted properly, that the innocent are protected as much as the guilty are held accountable. And it's because of that that I have a proven track record in the courtroom, and it's because of that that I've been honored with the endorsement by, as I said, all of the police officer associations that are issuing endorsements in this county, as well as Sheriff Bill Cogbill. I'm talking real fast, sorry. 90 seconds goes quick. So my skills are as a trial attorney, and I believe that I've also developed good skills as a manager up in Mendocino County, where I've been for the last 2 years. I came into an office that was in flux. We're moving forward. We're having great success. It's success that I can bring back here so that we can retain these prosecutors that seem to be leaving on a regular basis. And it isn't retirement, ladies and gentlemen. Many of them, like me, resign. Thank you.
And do you want me to question that again, or do you?
Yes, can you read the question, please?
Let's see. Thank you. What do you consider to be your strengths as the Chief District Attorney in Sonoma County, and what areas do you think need improvement to become more effective?
Well, first of all, I've been doing the job well for 8 years, and I'm very appreciative that the voters have elected me on 2 separate occasions. I think one of the strengths of my administration is the people in our office. We have top-notch prosecutors, victim advocates, and investigators, many who are here tonight. And they make my job easy because we've been able to hire the best and the brightest. And contrary to what my opponent says, and she's been saying it for some time about turnover, in any large organization, there's going to be people who leave. In fact, in our organization, we had the vast majority were retirements. 4 people left to become judges. 2 left, and then they decided to come back since we had such a great office. And 1 person quit. And she's had a number of jobs, and she finally was able to land a job in Mendocino County DA's office. We have a great office, and I think the strength really is developing relationships, working together, and having a vision, talking about the future. You know, we don't just prosecute cases, and we do a fabulous job. In fact, the Department of Justice reported that our conviction rate jumped to 74%, the highest in 10 years. Now, my opponent, in 2008, she's been in the office, only had a 67% conviction rate. So we're performing excellent in the courtroom, and I look forward to continue working with such a talented team of prosecutors.
All right, and Mr. Passalacqua, you have this question. This is about the budget. We learned just last week that Sonoma County is facing a projected deficit of over $61 million, leading the Board of Supervisors and administrators to consider cutting jobs and reducing services, to name a couple of their ideas. What steps do you think the DA's office needs to take during the next 4 years to deal with this financial situation? For instance, what would your policies be as district attorney regarding when to seek the death penalty, considering how costly that is to pursue? And would the budget crisis have any effect on your willingness to encourage plea bargains that include drug treatment and rehabilitation in place of incarceration and state prison?
Now, that's 3 questions, so do I have 3 minutes and 4 minutes and 30 seconds?
No.
Okay. Well, first of all,
it's all under the budget.
Being the district attorney requires skills of navigating treacherous waters. This is one of the most difficult budgets we've ever faced in the history of Sonoma County. It's not the time to take a risk on someone who doesn't have management experience in a large organization. This is not Mendocino County, where the population is 90,000, where there's only 15 prosecutors. We are the largest law firm north of the Golden Gate Bridge to the Oregon border. And what we've done in anticipating budget issues is look at comparative counties in terms of workload. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been able to get additional staff to get the job done because the demand on our services countywide has increased, but the workload for many years remained flat. So what we've done is we've sought grants from the federal government. We sought grants from the California Endowment. And in terms of the Family Justice Center, as a team, we worked with community partners to raise $1.3 million from grants and an anonymous donor through the Community Foundation of $500,000. And so this will open up this year, not on taxpayers' backs, but on grants and outside funding. So I have a record of being creative, of being innovative, and really bringing innovative change to the criminal justice system. So in the next 4 years, we're going to continue working with community-based organizations. We're going to be smart on crime. We've done that in the early case resolution court, where we were able to move cases along quicker in an effective manner.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch?
I didn't hear a lot about how we're going to handle the budget in the office. As you probably know, most of the budget in the district attorney's office goes to salaries. My opponent has received a $60,000 pay increase since he took office 8 years ago. He now makes $50,000 more a year than the Attorney General. Meanwhile, members of the office staff have voluntarily taken payback cuts. They're not reducing their salaries, but they're giving back some portion of their income so that others are not fired. I think that the district attorney should step out and do the same thing. There's a pay cut you can put in the bank. Additionally, let's take a look at the managers. Let's take a look at whether there should be reclassification of positions. Instead of thinking about last in, first out, I think we have to look at the entire organization and how we're best serving this community. I think we have to look at whether it really is prudent to take a manager and have that person out on the street doing community outreach, or whether it's more efficient to have that manager in the courtroom handling cases and supervising other attorneys that are less experienced. It really comes back to the job of the district attorney, ladies and gentlemen. It's to investigate and prosecute criminal misconduct. Our focus needs to be there. We need to be smart with the money. We need to really think about the best way to use these funds as they become more and more limited.
All right. And Ms. Ravitch, where do you think the new criminal courthouse for Sonoma County should be located and why?
Well, you know, I'm not a politician, but that's a pretty political question. I will tell you that I did tell Susan Gorin, our mayor of Santa Rosa, who has endorsed me along with the entire Santa Rosa City Council, that respectfully I disagreed with the notion of having the criminal courthouse downtown. We've already got facilities out where the county complex is, including our jail. It doesn't really make sense to me for us to start moving people accused of violent crimes downtown, where so many others are engaged in their daily lives. I think that there's a real problem there. I've spoken with the sheriff about it. He agrees with me. It just makes sense, and it's much more prudent from a financial standpoint as well. In Mendocino County, which though a smaller county, still a significant county, we actually bus people in from the jail, and there are all kinds of security risks. So I think it's easy to step out and say, in fact, the courthouse should be at the county complex. Additionally, the Family Justice Center, which is being discussed quite a bit by my opponent, is scheduled to be built out at the county complex. If indeed we're going to have some sort of a seamless connection between the services of the Family Justice Center and the courthouse itself, it just makes sense to keep it all there instead of moving it downtown. Thank you.
And Mr. Passalacqua.
Well, actually, the issue of the courthouse, where it's going to be, is moot. The federal government indicated that it wouldn't be possible to build it downtown given the time constraints of the Criminal Justice Planning Committee, so it will be built more than likely near the present courthouse. I think it's important to note that my opponent continues to say things that are just not accurate. Again, she doesn't have the depth of the knowledge of the budget situation here in Sonoma County. The fact is that I, along with all other department heads in the county, have given up salary. And it's kind of ironic, but this year, the Board of Supervisors gave me a raise in January. And I declined to take that raise because I didn't think that was prudent, and that money should go back to help other departments take care of their budgets. Another thing that's important for the public to know, that our management team handles high-profile cases. Chief Deputy Spencer Brady, Chief Deputy Rob LaForge, Assistant District Attorney Dinah Gomez worked very diligently on the murder case involving the death of Matthew Toste. For 9 months, Spencer Brady and Rob LaForge tried that case, and they did a phenomenal job where 4 out of the 5 were held accountable. The shooter will serve a 40 years to life sentence. So we have a phenomenal management staff, and we're going to continue looking at the budget in an effective and efficient manner. That's what I've been doing for 8 years. I have the knowledge, experience, and ability to do that. That's why 6 out of 7 of the current and past county supervisors have endorsed me.
All right. And you get the next question, Mr. Passalacqua. What is your policy regarding charging children in adult court? When do you use your authority to file charges in adult court, and when would you pursue a case in juvenile court?
First of all, I want to go back. There was a question about the death penalty, and neither one of us had a chance to answer that. During my tenure, I have not sought the death penalty here in Sonoma County. I believe it should be reserved for the worst of the worst, such as Ramon Salcido, who killed essentially his entire family and left remaining Carmina Salcida, or the kidnap and murder of Polly Klaas. Those are the type of cases I feel that we should seek the death penalty. In terms of children in the adult court, we're very, our philosophy is that we want to make sure children can rehabilitate themselves in the juvenile division. We don't want them to come to the adult court. We want to make sure that they take advantage of the programs to turn their lives around. That's why we helped form the truancy court to get kids to stay in school and to get on the right track. We have, in some instances, filed cases in the adult court involving violent crime and murder. I believe there was a 17-year-old kid who was involved in a murder, and we did file on that. We're very selective. I do know that under my opponent's tenure in Mendocino County, they filed in adult court charges against a 14-year-old. And I disagree with that. I think that's way too young, that we have to make sure that our youth have an opportunity to turn their lives around. So we're very selective and careful when we file charges in adult court with minors under the age of 18.
Ms. Ravitch?
Well, there's an inaccuracy. When the two of us were lucky enough to be at the table together not too long ago, I pointed out quite clearly that the case up in Mendocino County that my opponent just referenced regarding a 14-year-old was filed before my boss even took office. The decision was made well before I came to Mendocino County. So it doesn't seem to be very fair to saddle me with a decision that was made by somebody other than the person who hired me. It's important to be truthful about why we're running, why we're qualified, and what we bring to the table, which is why I think it's important to have experience in the courtroom and experience as a prosecutor of kids to understand how difficult it is to make a decision whether or not to file adult charges against a juvenile. Juvenile court's all about rehabilitation. Juvenile court's all about helping a kid figure out which way is up so that he or she can go out into the world and lead a productive life. That's really what it's about. It's a very different setup than adult court. And all of the people who participate in it need to buy into that and participate well. A decision to file against a child directly in adult court is one that has to be made wisely based upon the offense, the offender's background, the position of the victims, and what's in the best interest of public safety. You don't come by that kind of a decision lightly. Thank you.
And Ms. Ravitch. Do you support civilian oversight of law enforcement? Why or why not?
I do. It's called the grand jury. We have a sitting grand jury that reviews all officer-involved fatalities, and they've been doing that as far back as I know. In fact, they recently criticized my opponent because of the delay in rendering his report on those officer-involved fatalities, and that's one of many reasons that law enforcement has lost confidence. There's a policy in this county that once the review reaches the DA's office, he's supposed to render an opinion within 60 days. Well, according to the most recent grand jury report, that review has taken anywhere from 7 to 22 months, meaning that the officer doesn't know whether he or she is going to be cleared, the victim's family doesn't know whether or not this was a justifiable situation, and finally the public doesn't know whether or not the officer did something wrong and whether or not there should be concern about whether or not law enforcement is out of control. So we have a civilian review board, not only for those kinds of incidents, but other incidents involving law enforcement. Additionally, there's always the complaint review process through the independent agencies that can ultimately result in a report to the grand jury for review. It is important to have oversight, it is important to have review, but it's also important, if we're going to trust these law enforcement agencies to do their job, that we not saddle them with continued oversight and over-review. We need to make decisions in a wise fashion, particularly with officer-involved fatalities, but we do need to have a thorough review process, which is why the grand jury process is in place. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua?
Thank you. I would just say that it's very unfortunate that in 2007 and 2008, we had 17 officer-involved fatalities in Sonoma County, and some of those were jail deaths. And after that time frame, there was a discussion in Sonoma County to have mental health crisis training for law enforcement. This was a discussion that took place at the Sonoma County Law Enforcement Chiefs Association, where I previously was elected by my colleagues, the leaders in public safety, as the president. But the discussion was that we should bring that type of training to Sonoma County. I fully supported that training, and since that time, we've only had one jail death in Sonoma County. Sometimes these officer-involved fatalities take a long time. In fact, we had a case that took law enforcement close to a year until they provided us the reports. These are complex cases. Contrary to what my opponent has said, you can't do them in 30 days. You can't rubber stamp something that involves lethal force where a victim dies and law enforcement's career is maybe determine what's going to happen. These are serious matters. They require deliberation and thought, and sometimes even expert witnesses out of the county. So we're going to continue being fair and be independent and allow the grand jury to look at the process, and ultimately the people will make a decision when we determine whether we're going to file charges or not.
Okay, I only have one more question at this point, so I'm going to go through these. Just a reminder of these questions that you've submitted already. We're trying to, as you can tell, ask the same question of both folks. So if you have a question that is directed to one person and not the other, I'm going to try to frame it so that the other person has a chance to answer that question. But keep them coming. Okay, Mr. Passalacqua. This regards the 3 strikes law, and there are numerous questions here, so you just pick whatever you want to talk about.
Thank you.
Okay. What is your office policy regarding the application of the 3 strikes law? What criteria would you use to determine when to charge someone with a 2nd or 3rd strike? And would you support reforming the 3 strikes law to require that the 3rd strike be a violent felony?
The 3 strikes law is a valuable tool to remove violent career criminals from our community. If it was in existence today, Polly Klaas would still be alive. Richard Allen Davis would have qualified for the 3 strikes law prior to being released from state prison. So I believe it's a valuable tool to make this a safer community. In my office, we have a procedure where if it's going to be a 3rd strike, it has to go to a review committee that is spearheaded by one of my assistant district attorneys. Actually, she's here tonight, Diana Gomez, the first Latina in the management office in the Sonoma County DA's office. So we're very careful. We look at the entire history of the individual, whether they have violent offenses, whether they have what the present underlying offense is. Is it a violent crime or a nonviolent offense? So we've been very selective, and essentially the vast majority of any 3 strikes cases has been what's considered a violent crime, such as a residential burglary or assault with a deadly weapon. There's been some exceptions to that, but that's been where a person has a horrendous background and a very dangerous past. So I do feel it is important to utilize in an effective manner. And there have been some reforms that have been trying to take place, but I do think it is valuable the way it is today.
And Ms. Ravitch.
The 3 strikes law has a place in our society, and it is a result of heinous offenders like Richard Allen Davis preying upon people. However, it has to be used wisely. The law actually currently mandates that if the DA is aware of a strike, then it's incumbent upon the district attorney to file that prior strike conviction. So if you follow the spirit and the letter of the law, it mandates that we file those strikes, that we not round table and decide whether or not we're going to go forward. I do believe that law does need to be reformed. I believe that we should not be filing 3rd strikes on individuals who commit nonviolent offenses. And it's a position that's been taken by other district attorneys throughout the state. But at this point, the law requires that the strikes be filed, and then a decision can be made based upon the offender, the circumstances of the offense. The victims always get to weigh in, and ultimately what's in the interest of public safety about whether a strike should be stricken. For the public's information, the law has really changed since the 3 strikes law took effect. Courts now have discretion to strike those strikes as well, as do prosecutors if there's insufficient evidence or other evidence that doesn't support seeking a strike conviction. So I think it's something that, again, attorneys with experience need to weigh in on, but ultimately I do think there needs to be reform, and I think the people that actually wrote the 3 strikes legislation agree with that. Thank you.
All right, here's the audience first question, and this will be to Ms. Ravitch. With a large and growing Latino population, how do you plan on continuing with bilingual services?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, with a large and growing Latino population, if you were the district attorney, how would you plan on continuing with bilingual services in your office?
Well, it's obviously something that's going to be important in our community, and I'm cognizant of the issues involving the Latino community. I've been endorsed by the Latino Peace Officers Association, as well as the Latino PAC. I always forget what PAC stands for, especially when I'm staring at a bunch of people in a camera. Nonetheless, a number of individuals in the Latino community have supported me because they understand that I understand their issues that are sensitive to the Latino community with regard to how they interface with the law enforcement community. There's a certain amount of distrust, and we need to overcome that distrust by having services available. It was only recently that the Investigators Division of the District Attorney's Office brought in a bilingual investigator. The investigators interface with witnesses all the time when they're serving subpoenas. They were using an investigative assistant to assist them. In fact, the last murder trial I handled in Sonoma County before I resigned in 2004, a 3-defendant murder case with individuals alleged to have stabbed a man and actually stabbed 2 men, one who survived. We needed a bilingual interpreter, so I had to rely upon one of the investigative assistants because there was nobody else available in the office. It's important that we be able to communicate. It's important that we be able to offer the services that are necessary for all segments of our community, Latino and otherwise. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua.
The three co-defendant murder case that my opponent just alluded to prior to her quitting the office involved the tragic death of Salvador Figueroa. That was a case where it was a home invasion murder. 2 people were stabbed. It was a gang retaliation case, and my opponent wanted to plea bargain that case. I said no. If that would have been plea bargain, 2 of those individuals would more than likely be back in our community today. The fact of the matter is we are a growing Latino community, and we have to have bilingual services to communicate, and we've done that. That's been one of the hallmarks of my administration, and that's why I have such strong support from Donna Zapata, Juan Hernandez, Willie Tamayo, and Delia Nieto. Yo hablo español muy bien, y es muy importante que debemos comunicar a las víctimas de crimen en español. Should I continue in Spanish? I just said it's important that we have people who can speak in the same language of Latinos. And we've made that, we've really strived to do that in our office. Before I became the DA, we didn't have any bilingual services. We didn't have diversity in the DA's office. And in Mendocino County, there's virtually no diversity in the Mendocino DA's office. We have people of all backgrounds who speak different languages, which is consistent with our community today.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Passalacqua, this is the next question. I'm concerned that women have repeatedly reported being raped to police but have received no follow-up. What will you do to decrease the current record of justice denied in cases of reported rapes? And this is you being the current DA and, of course, Ms. Ravitch, in case she would be the new DA.
Anytime a woman is sexually assaulted, that's a tragic and a very emotional situation that my office takes very seriously. And that's why we formed a special victims unit with expert and experienced prosecutors to handle those cases, such as Deshaun Sanders, who came up from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. And Steve Cooley said, he's the DA in LA, and I said, Steve, I'm going to be hiring one of your prosecutors. What do you have to say? And he said, well, you're taking one of our bright stars, but as long as she represents the people, that's okay. She handled the tragic kidnap and rape of a 22-year-old mom in front of her son in Bennett Valley. And the jury convicted that individual, and he's serving a 58 years of life sentence. So I think it's important that we continue to work in collaborative fashion with United Against Sexual Assault. Christine Castillo is here tonight, and other nonprofits who provide crisis training to victims of sexual assault. And I think if there's a specific case, I would request that the individual bring that to our office's attention. We do have talented staff and victim advocates who really care and passionate about helping victims. So I think it's a serious matter that anytime something like that happens, we have to look at it closely. But in Sonoma County, sexual assaults have dropped significantly the last 5 years, as opposed to Mendocino County, where they have climbed.
All right. And this is...
Did you want me to answer?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have to, but it seems like it's a fair thing.
Please do.
Thanks. I just want to be clear with one thing. I'm not the district attorney of Mendocino County. I'm third in command. I've been working hard since I got there in 2008. And so I hope you'll take that into consideration when you listen to the words that are coming from my opponent's mouth. Unlike me, he's the chief law enforcement officer in Sonoma County. He's the one you've elected to run the district attorney's office. When you talk about accountability, let's talk about the person you've asked to run the office and what's happening inside of that office. With regard to the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office, there are a lot of fine attorneys, but there's also a lot of turnover. Experienced attorneys are not staying, whether through resignation, retirement, or termination. In fact, one of the finest senior deputy district attorneys was put out on administrative leave for 11 months before a decision was made just after the election to fire her. Those 11 months were a period during which nobody did the work that she had been paid to do, and yet her salary continued. It's important that we have our experienced lawyers handling serious cases like rape cases, like sexual assault cases. These are cases I've handled for years, ladies and gentlemen, and it's important that we have advocates that are trained to deal with these issues too. My opponent currently is looking for his 4th victim witness director under his tenure. Apparently he's promoted a victim advocate to fill that position, so that's one less advocate to interface with a victim of a violent crime. It's a question of priorities. Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Ravitch, describe your position on legalizing marijuana.
Can we defer that till Wednesday? I say that because we've got a forum that's planned on Wednesday with a different group, and I expect that my opponent and I are going to answer a lot of questions about that.
We can do that.
Well, actually, I'd like to hear her answer today.
Did you want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead.
It's just 1.5 minutes.
I mean, the rules are the rules, aren't they, Ms. Moderator?
You know,
Okay.
I don't think really as a candidate I should weigh in right now on whether or not marijuana should be legalized. There's an initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November, and we're all going to have an opportunity to voice our opinion at the ballot box. If the initiative passes, I'll certainly enforce whatever law comes as a result of it. But at this point, if I'm honored with your vote and am elected district attorney, I will simply promise you that I will enforce the laws of the land. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua.
Yes, I firmly support medical marijuana. I think it's a public health issue. I firmly believe that qualified patients should receive medical marijuana. It should be more accessible. It should be in a more safer environment. Unfortunately, that is a concern that we have in our community today. With respect to the initiative in November, the voters will determine whether that's going to pass. In all likelihood, it probably will pass. And I have followed the law for 8 years as district attorney, and I will continue to do so. In terms of the 3 strikes law, my opponent mentioned a moment ago her views, and she also mentioned about management and not taking responsibilities for things. As a DA, you don't have the luxury of saying your initials are not on the courtroom minutes, that your fingerprints are not on the case file. You have the responsibility of determining what happens and taking responsibility of things when they don't go right and when they go, you also get credit for when they go well. But under her leadership as a chief deputy, a school teacher who was charged with sexual battering, annoying, and molesting 5 children was allowed to dismiss that case under her leadership. He will never have to register, and he didn't do a day of jail, and he can continue to teach in public schools. So that's a troubling case that happened under her leadership as a chief deputy in the Mendocino County DA's office.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Passalacqua, how will you continue to further ensure the dignity of and improve conditions for people living with mental health challenges in Sonoma County?
Could you repeat that question, please?
How will you continue to further ensure the dignity of and improve conditions for people living with mental health challenges in Sonoma County? I'm assuming this is if they break the law, if that is what is the question referring to?
Mental health issues can strike a family at any time, can strike a community at any time. I, in fact, have experienced someone very close to me who has mental illness. So I know firsthand how troubling that is for a family and for a community. And that's why I've been supportive of forming mental health court. That I partnered with some judges. A number of the judges are here today. I'd like to just say hello to them. It's nice to see you back there. But we partner with the judges and probation to ensure that people who have mental health issues get the treatment they need be to function in our community. So I fully support programs. We also formed under my tenure a mental health court in the juvenile division. And I think it's critical that we provide services, especially in this time of dwindling resources, that we're smart, that we're efficient, and that we partner to help those who suffer from mental illness. However, like any individual, when they're violent, when there's serious injuries, then we have to handle them in the criminal system. I would prefer that we're proactive, that we partner like we're doing now and trying to help individuals with mental health concerns to get on their medication, to get counseling, to turn their lives around.
Ms. Ravitch?
Unfortunately, our jail is serving as a mental health facility for people that suffer from mental illness. Too many individuals that come under the purview of the criminal justice system, in good part because they're off their medication or they're having a psychotic episode, end up in our jails, and it's not the right place for them to be. It's important that we single those cases out, we identify them, we decide whether or not criminal charges really are warranted, and if we have to move them through the system, we do it as quickly as we can and avoid these incredible delays that are happening. And if indeed it is a case where it was a mental illness that resulted in the misconduct and the individual doesn't belong in the system and belongs perhaps under a conservatorship, then we need to make that decision. But we're going to always have gaps in the mental illness and mental health services that are being provided because, like everything else, they're getting cut. So again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it comes back to experience, it comes back to prosecutors who can figure out whether it's an individual suffering from mental illness or mental health issues, or whether it's somebody who's committing criminal misconduct. I have 30 seconds, and I just want to say, the case counsel referenced, I have the docket for. It was filed before I arrived in Mendocino County. I never touched it. The district attorney handled it. Counsel knows that. It's been discussed time and again. This has absolutely nothing to do with whether I should be the next district attorney. Let's talk about his record. Let's talk about whether he deserves another term, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
And Ms. Ravitch. The question here is with the gang problem. If you were the district attorney, how would you handle the gang problem? What improvements would you make? Just how would you handle it as the new district attorney?
Well, thank you. I'm handling it now as best as I can up in Mendocino County, where a number of gang members are moving north. And we're dealing with a lot of the same individuals that we've been dealing with down here in Sonoma County. I've been prosecuting gang cases for many, many years. And actually, my opponent's wrong about that murder case I handled. It was not a gang retaliation case. But that having been said, it's important that we work well with law enforcement to address gang issues. The slogan in the last race was "Stop Gang Violence, Re-elect Mr. Passalacqua." Well, we haven't stopped gang violence. It's worse. There was a murder this weekend that may have been gang-related. It's important that we be smart in how we address the problem. That's why Ernesto Oliveras, a longtime police officer who ran the Mayor's Gang Task Force, has endorsed me. He and I have discussed how important it is to have a countywide effort to really battle gang violence. It takes prosecutors who are trained, working well with law enforcement members, as well as community-based organizations who can help with the prevention of membership in gangs for juveniles. Keep them from joining, and if necessary, intervene, and if ultimately required, then punish them and target the violent offenders and get them out of our society as quickly and effectively as we can. Thank you.
And Mr. Passalacqua, what improvements have you made to deal with the gang problem?
We've made tremendous progress here in Sonoma County tackling gang issues. And one of the things we did in 2006 is host a gang summit for the state of California with the FBI, the Attorney General, and 6 other of my colleagues up and down the state to really let the public know and really start working together and approaching gang violence from a regional perspective. And that's exactly what we've done, and it's paid off. In fact, the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, which I've been a member of since the beginning, is making fabulous progress in keeping our youth out of gangs. In fact, the person that counsel alluded to, former lieutenant of the San Jose Police Department, has spoken at Rotary and said that we have made remarkable progress on reducing gang violence in our community and reducing the membership of gang members. Contrary to what my opponent says, I firmly believe that we have to partner with the community. We have to get outside of the courtroom and help our youth stay on the right track. And that's why we've partnered with the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Rosa to keep kids out of gangs. It's expanded countywide, and over 100 kids now have not joined gangs because of this program.
Okay. And Mr. Passalacqua. Where do you stand with restorative justice for juvenile offenders? Do you see it as a healing process for both victims and offenders?
Before I go into that particular answer, I just want to correct the record. The case that I alluded to in Mendocino County involving a teacher, Jill Ravage was the chief deputy of the DA's office. The dismissal was in July of 2008, and it's very troubling that the defense attorney on that case is from Sonoma County, and after that dismissal contributed the maximum amount to her campaign of $2,500. Secondly, the case that she alluded to, the 3 co-defendant gang murder case, it was a gang retaliation case where 3 Norteños went and committed a home invasion to a Sereno house. And contrary to what she said, she tried to plea bargain that case, and I refused to do that. The jury came back with the first-degree murder, and she quit the following day. In terms of, could you repeat that question? I lost my train of thought.
Where do you stand with restorative justice?
Thank you. Restorative justice has been very valuable in Sonoma County. In fact, I just spoke to a person in Oakmont the other day when I was walking out there who supports me after I talked to her, and she was a firm believer that we can make a difference in that area. We've done it in the juvenile division where a victim meets directly with the perpetrator, and it's been fabulous in terms of increasing respect for one another. And I think in the near future we will be starting it in the adult division. But I think any tool like that to heal our community is important. It's necessary. It's necessary that we're more creative than ever before in this economic climate as well.
And Ms. Ravitch.
I think restorative justice is a great program. I think it works well in the juvenile system. I think it's good for juvenile offenders to be confronted with the pain that they've caused, the damage that they've caused, and have a better understanding of what the incident has done to the person who has been injured, as well as the community at large. I think it's also great for victims to have an opportunity to really have a voice in the process. And I think it works better in the juvenile system than it does in the adult system. There's some judges here, particularly Judge Tansel, who I know has participated in restorative justice. I have to go back. I wasn't there when the case was filed. I had nothing to do with it. Let's talk about the record of my opponent and whether he is qualified to serve. He's never tried a murder case, and obviously he's second-guessing the prosecutor who handled the murder case that resulted in first-degree convictions. Please, let's talk about his record, let's talk about my record, and let's talk about who's best fit to serve as the next district attorney. I mean, I'm running on a record as a proven prosecutor. I'm running on a record of somebody who's leading the Mendocino District Attorney's Office to a better place. The Prosecutors Association, under his watch, didn't even vote to endorse him. Doesn't that suggest they've lost confidence in him too when he couldn't get a 60% approval rating from his own prosecutors, most of whom he hired? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's real. Let's talk about what's important to this county. Let's talk about fighting gang violence. Thank you.
All right, this next question is regarding cases and how you folks choose which cases you're going to prosecute. And I'll just read off a couple of them. Ms. Ravitch, you're first. How do you choose the cases to prosecute? Which cases are settled out of court, or why are they settled out of court? What percentage of cases go to trial as compared to plea bargaining? Do we have the correct percentage on that? And then what type of cases are at the top of your priority list to prosecute? And I think that's enough.
You sure?
Yes.
All right. For those of you who don't understand how cases come into the district attorney's office, primarily the law enforcement agencies do the investigation, sometimes with the assistance of the DA's office, through review of search warrants and discussion about various legal issues. And then the reports are submitted to the DA's office for review and decision whether or not to file charges, and if so, what charges to file. The decision is going to be based upon what the evidence is as it's contained in the police reports, as well as discussions with the investigators, or even perhaps reaching out to a witness or a victim for clarification. But you don't file cases that you don't think you can prevail upon. The burden is not beyond a reasonable doubt to file a case, but it should be considerable when you think about the impact it's going to have on somebody's life. That's why you don't file frivolous cases. That's why you don't file cases hoping later the evidence will come together. And once you do file the cases, you do have to always consider disposition. You're always thinking, what's in the best interest of our community? Public safety, accountability, a voice for the victim. Lots of different things come into play. Most cases are plea bargain, believe it or not. Very few actually go to jury trial, which again is why an 88% felony jury trial conviction rate overlooks the thousands and thousands of cases that come into the DA's office for review and filing every year. It's important that we look at the big picture, and it's important that we hold everybody accountable. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Seriously?
Well, there's different parts to it.
Okay. All right, now let's not
I have a little daughter that keeps me up sometime in the middle of the night, so I make sure I got the right question here.
Okay. Well, there were about 4 or 5 cards dealing with this. How do you choose the cases to prosecute?
That's fine. Now I recall.
You know about the
it.
prosecution. Okay.
We are one of the largest offices in Northern California. We look at 30,000 cases a year from law enforcement, and we file approximately close to 20,000 misdemeanors and around 3,000 felonies. We have some of the most experienced prosecutors in the state of California. In fact, one of the prosecutors who used to work in Mendocino County, who was in our gang unit, she was a chief deputy of Mendocino County, Victoria Shanahan, is in our gang unit, does a fabulous job and has endorsed me for my reelection. I'm also very proud of having the support of 2 of the first female assistant district attorneys in our office, Christine Cook and Diana Gomez, who are here in the front row, and I really appreciate the hard work they do every day. But one of the things that we do, and we do it very well, is ensure that we're being fair, ensure that we protect victims' rights and defendants' rights. And that's why I'm proud that the Department of Justice just released the recent conviction rates for 2008. And ours has jumped to 74%, the highest it's been in 10 years, as compared to my opponent's record in Mendocino County under her watch, which is 67%. So I think it's important to look at everything closely. We have a new court called Early Case Resolution to be more efficient. And in last year alone, 70% of all felony cases got resolved in 3 weeks, as opposed to 2006, where it took the same number over 100 days. So we're being more efficient. And we have to ensure that we hear the voice of the victims loudly and clearly. And that's the top priority when we resolve these cases.
All right. And this is just an informational question. How many people in your office speak Spanish currently?
Well, we have 130 employees, 53 prosecutors. We have 18 investigators. I would say approximately the prosecutors themselves, we have 3 in this room that speak Spanish, proficient Spanish. But I would say approximately 7 or 8 speak different languages, from Asian languages to Spanish and Middle Eastern languages as well. As well as we have 3 of our 7 victim advocates who are bilingual, and 1 of our investigators is bilingual as well.
Thank you. Okay, and I think it's your turn again, right? What kind of community outreach do you have in place now? And of course, Ms. Ravitch, what kind of community outreach will you have in place? So we'll start with you, Mr. Passalacqua.
We are very progressive in outreach, as I firmly believe that you can't be reactive. You have to be proactive in making a safer and a healthier community. And we have done that very well by being innovative and bringing positive change to the DA's office. We put on forums with the Council on Aging, Senior Advocacy Services, my law enforcement partners, and others to host forums on elder protection in Oakmont, in Sonoma, Cloverdale, West County, and scheduled for other parts of the county later this year, to arm seniors and give them information about scams and fraud. I think that's critical to do. We also have done a lot with using state-of-the-art technology to monitor drunk drivers who cause tragedy in our roadways. So I'm a firm believer in that this economic climate, even more so than ever, that we have to have a leader who knows how to build relationships, who knows how to bring people together to make a safer community. We've done it on so many fronts. We've done it on victims' rights with the Family Justice Center that will open soon. We've done it on gang prevention. We've done it, and that's why I'm so proud to have the endorsement of one of the key workers for the California Youth Outreach, Steve Velasquez, who works with our gang, former gang members and those who are flirting with the idea. So we got to continue being smart, working with our youth. I see in the audience Nancy Wong from the Ravage Chinese Association. We partner with her to keep our youth out of gangs and get in the right track.
Ms. Ravitch.
A place where my opponent and I really differ is in the amount of community outreach that the district attorney's office should engage in. I talked to a victim advocate who told me that she's concerned that she's being required to go to community outreach opportunities and doesn't have the time she needs to work with the victims on cases that are pending in the office. I think there does need to be community outreach. I agree with that, and there has been for many years before my opponent took office. I was doing community outreach before I left. It was important for victims of violent crimes, victims of sexual assault, victims of domestic violence, to know what kind of services we offered. It's important now for witnesses to gang violence to understand that they can trust us and come forward and work with us to get the offenders out of their neighborhoods. Community outreach is important, but it's a question of how much. And in his recent report to the people that my opponent has actually used on his campaign table, it's all about community outreach. It's not about prosecution. It's not about conviction rates. At the end of the day, it's great when you work with your partners in the community to ensure that the public is informed. But at the end of the day, you need to be successful. You need to win cases. You need to put away the people that are preying on our community so that we're safe. Going from 60-odd% up to 74 is like going from an F to a D+. Take a look at the Attorney General website, ladies and gentlemen, well below the state average for conviction rates.
All right. Okay.
How are we doing on time?
Good. All right, and Ms. Ravitch is next. As Chief Law Enforcement Officer, how would you work with the federal government to address illegal immigrants caught in the criminal justice system? What is your position on addressing this complex issue?
Well, it is a complex issue. And I don't believe as Chief Law Enforcement Officer I should be working with federal government. As Chief Law Enforcement Officer, my job is to enforce the laws of the state of California. It's not to enforce the federal laws and assist ICE in carrying out their obligations. We have a community here where we have many individuals that are facing immigration issues, and it's important that they not lose confidence in the DA's office if they want to come forward and report a crime, or if they need our assistance, whether through a law enforcement agency or through the district attorney's office. So I really think it's important that you take a stand and you say, I'm not going to work with ICE. That's what Sheriff Bill Cogbill said when they put the machinery into his department so that they could identify individuals. But it's also important, after we prosecute individuals, to make them available for deportation. There's no reason to keep them in our community if they are here illegally. But I think what we really need to avoid is any racial profiling. What I really think we need to do is address ourselves to those who are committing criminal misconduct, preying upon our citizenry, and encourage those who are afraid to come forward and report those crimes. There's a process with regard to domestic violence where a domestic violence victim can receive some protection from immigration if she comes forward and cooperates in the prosecution of a case. It's a great idea. At the end of the day, the priority of the DA's office needs to be to keep our community safe, to do everything we can to ensure that each of us feels good. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua.
I think we need to be respectful of those who come to our country to have a better life. But we also need to be respectful of those who live here and ensure that the laws are followed and that they're followed very closely. I'm a firm believer that you have to be fair, you have to understand the role of the DA's office and is to make it a safer community. And not only be handling cases in the courtroom, but also be proactive and reach out to other jurisdictions. In terms of violent criminals, we have a proven record of being tough against violent gang members and sexual predators. And if it involves working with the federal government to remove individuals like that from our community, we certainly will do so. We are part of the North Bay Regional Gang Task Force with the FBI that started under my leadership with State Parole, the San Jose Police Department, to really target violent gang members, whether they're Italian, Irish, Spanish, Polish, Russian, or what have you. We're going to remove them from our community. But in terms of individuals who may not have a valid license, I think law enforcement needs to consider that sometimes this is their only form of transportation. And if that car is impounded and they're taken away, then they may not be able to pay their rent. They may not be able to pay their bills. So I think there needs to be flexibility and fairness. And in terms of violent crime, we need to be cognizant of how that affects the community. But ultimately, the federal government makes a decision on who they're going to deport from our county jails and from the state.
Thank you. For those of you who will be watching this on television and are just tuning in to this program, you're wondering why we're sitting here. This is the candidate forum for the Office of District Attorney of Sonoma County. And we have two candidates, Jill Ravage and Stephan Passalacqua. So this is a very interesting question here, and I think I should have asked this in the very beginning. And this is going to Mr. Passalacqua. Why do we, or why should we care so much about the district attorney race? Why is the district attorney office so important to our county and the community?
The number one priority of government is public safety. That we're safe in our homes, we're safe in our schools, we're safe in our faith-based institutions, and we're safe walking down the street. And I'm proud of what we've done in reducing crime countywide. If you look at the county website, there's a report about the various Sonoma County indicators, from how healthy we are as a community, what the different demographics are, and what the crime trends are in Sonoma County. From 2004 to 2008, it showed that property crimes dropped 31% in Sonoma County. That violent crime dropped 11% in Sonoma County. And in Santa Rosa alone, violent crime has dropped 27%. So it's important that we work in a collaborative fashion. And we have some of the most fabulous individuals in my office. They're intelligent, they're dedicated, and they work tirelessly to help you and all of us have a safe community. So I'm proud of what they're doing, and it's troubling to hear from my opponent say that we don't have experienced prosecutors. It's really mind-boggling, because these are prosecutors who are veterans, such as Diana Gomez, who has over 20 years experience, Chief Deputy Spencer Brady, who has 21 years experience, Tashawn Sanders, who has close to 15 years experience. And they do a fabulous job in making this a safe community. So it's crucial, this race is crucial to have someone who knows how to get the job done, and I'm that individual.
Ms. Ravitch.
I agree with the last statement. It's important to have somebody who knows how to get the job done. This is an important race, ladies and gentlemen. It's important to people beyond my opponent and myself. It's important to you. The district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer. It's important that the DA work well with law enforcement partners, that the DA work well with the courts, with defense attorneys, and with the community. so that we all feel safe in our homes and in our lives. It's important that the district attorney understand what the charge is to hold the guilty accountable, and it's to protect the innocent. And I know a little bit about that because I did spend 3 years as a defense attorney before I was lucky enough to get back into the courtroom as a prosecutor after I resigned because I couldn't work under my opponent. And during that time, I learned a lot more about what happens in the courtroom and how important it is to hold everybody accountable, both the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and even the court, as well as the offender, as well as the witnesses and the victims. Everybody has a different role to play, and it's important that you understand the dynamic. That way you can impart that understanding upon the people that work with you, so that the prosecutors understand you, respect you, understand that you respect them, and together you can deliver the kind of justice that this county deserves. That's my goal, and I hope to give you that type of justice if I'm elected. Thank you.
All right, several people had a question about this particular issue, and this is Ms. Ravitch, right? Yes. Why do you think the Prosecutors Association chose not to endorse anyone in this race? Can you explain why the prosecutors in the office, district attorney office, failed to endorse either candidate, even though the vote was a secret ballot?
Is that it?
That's it?
My opponent and I had an opportunity to address the Prosecutors Association, maybe last week or the week before. These days are flying by, and each of us had an opportunity to make a statement, and then we answered a series of questions. And I have to tell you, I was surprised when I went into the room because I didn't know so many people that were in there. Many of them have come in since I left the office in 2004. I didn't expect to get an endorsement, and when I left, one of the last things I said to them was, hey, most of you have been hired by my opponent. Many of you have been working with him for the last 2 terms. If he's doing a great job, this is your opportunity to say so. It's a secret ballot. Go ahead and say, give him another term. That's fine. But if you think that we can do better, if you think that there are real problems in this office, and if you think that it's worth change, then don't vote for him and give me a chance and let me win your respect. They didn't endorse either of us. It required a 60% vote. It was a secret ballot, and I think that it speaks volumes. It's important that you have the confidence and support of the people that you lead. It's important that they respect you because you respect them, and that there's a basis of mutual trust. That's the kind of trust that I've been building in Mendocino County because I lead by example, and I give my attorneys discretion because, yes, they are experienced, as they are here, but they need to have the tools to get the job done, and they need to have the respect of the person who leads them. And it needs to be somebody who's done it themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua.
Repeat the question, please.
Okay. Can you explain? Yes. Why did the Prosecutors Association choose not to endorse anyone and the secret ballot?
The Prosecutors Association has not endorsed any candidate as long as I've been the district attorney, as long as I've been a prosecutor in the DA's office going back over 20 years. That's just the reality of the situation. Prosecutors don't want to get involved in politics, and I don't blame them because their focus is prosecuting cases. But I think it's important in this election. My opponent talked about who's the most qualified. I've been doing the job for 8 years, and we've had phenomenal results. We've delivered results in making this a safer community, making sure the voice of victims is heard loudly and clearly. And the real difference is who has been doing the job well. And you know, what I've been protecting this community, my opponent has had 6 jobs in 6 years. And that is troubling if you want to be the chief law enforcement officer of Sonoma County. It's also troubling why she was reassigned a murder case in Mendocino County. That just happened, actually happened in the fall. She handled a murder case involving the tragic death of an individual in Fort Bragg. So why was she reassigned that case? And I think it's also important to know that endorsements are nice to have, but the bottom line is you, the voters, will determine this election. I have faith in your decision-making ability that you will select the right person and will make a fair decision, and I look forward to serving you for another 4 years.
All right, and this is our last question for this evening, and thank you very much. They have been all excellent questions. We'll start with you, Mr. Passalacqua. In this person's opinion, why are domestic violence and sexual crimes frequently dealt down to misdemeanors instead of felonies? And why do not all sexual crime perpetrators have to register as sex offenders?
Well, in terms of sexual assaults, we've seen a 16% drop in Sonoma County in the last, from 2006 to 2008, while there's been an increase in Mendocino County. It's important to look at all these cases very closely, look at the background, the severity of one's background in determining what's the right thing to do. Sometimes the law requires that people register as a sex offender. Sometimes judges have discretion to do that, and sometimes that judges may decide for whatever reason that a person should not have to register. So there's a number of factors that play into that, but I think it's important for the public to know that I'm independent. I'm fair-minded, and I have a proven track record of making tough decisions that sometimes may not be popular. I'm not the sheriff's attorney, and I'm not the attorney for the police associations. My obligation is to the people of Sonoma County to do what's right, to make sure that cases are properly investigated before we file charges, and that we don't just throw something up against the wall to see if it sticks. We have to be diligent and meticulous, and we've done that. And last year alone, we had 100% guilty verdicts on murder cases that went to a jury. So I'm very proud of my record, and I'm proud of how we treat victims of domestic violence and sexual assault with respect and dignity.
Ms. Ravitch?
6 jobs in 6 years. After 15 years in the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office, I resigned, went into private practice, tried my hand at civil litigation, and then went back to being a prosecutor in Mendocino County. And the other job, I teach criminal law at the Empire Law School at night. That's it. Otherwise, I've been a prosecutor my entire career. A reassigned murder case, I was in the middle of another murder case. I couldn't balance two at the same time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back to the record. Let's get back to whether my opponent should be reelected for another 4 years. Let's talk about domestic violence and sexual assault, areas that I've toiled hard in throughout the years as a prosecutor. Let's talk about domestic violence cases that were set for jury trial, misdemeanor domestic violence cases, some of the toughest to prove. In the month of March, every misdemeanor domestic violence case that was set for jury trial was dismissed on the day of trial. The prosecutor wasn't ready to go forward, or deemed the case wasn't ready to go forward for some reason. That's the kind of record we want to look at. That's the kind of record we want to question. It's important that you have a leader of this office who understands what the job is and can lead others to get the job done for you. Thank you.
Now, let's give Mr. Passalacqua and Ms. Ravitch a round of applause. Thank you both for stepping in the arena as candidates to working for the public good. Good luck to both of you. I want to thank the committees with the Sonoma County Bar Association and the League of Women Voters for their help and cooperation in putting on this event. Thank you to the Glaser Center for providing the venue. And just so you know, this center will be used again when the League of Women Voters presents yet another candidate forum next Monday night. This time, the candidates who will be sitting here on the stage are those running for Sonoma County Judge. And it will be Monday, next Monday, May 3rd at 6:30. It really will be at 6:30. Thanks to Community Media Center Santa Rosa for taping this forum so it can be shown on television later. It can be seen on KRCB Television, Channel 22, on Sunday morning, May 30th at 8 a.m. and on Comcast Community Access Channels 26 and 30 in Santa Rosa numerous times throughout May and into the first couple of days of June. So set your TiVos for those. The times and dates are on some of the tables out in the lobby. And the Press Democrat has streaming video of this event on their website, watchsonomacounty.com. And speaking of websites, please check out the League's website. It is a nonpartisan site full of election information, smartvoter.org. If you enter your address and zip code, your ballot will come up and you can see your own ballot online. Here's some important dates to remember. Absentee ballots go out May 10th. Last day to register is May 24th, Election Day, and you vote in person at your polling place Tuesday, June 8th. Now, before we leave, these candidates do have their closing statements to give, and we will certainly have that in the reverse order of how it was in the beginning. So, Mr. Passalacqua, you are first.
Thank you. I'm proud to be the Sonoma County District Attorney, and the results we have achieved in the areas of reducing crime in Sonoma County, the Family Justice Center, senior services, youth prevention, and ensuring that the voice of victims is heard. I'm also proud of our results in alternative courts and partnerships in the community. I'm also proud that we have been innovative and have been very efficient in how we use taxpayers' funds while still delivering important services to our community. I have a proven record of getting tough on violent gang members and sexual predators. And that is why I have such broad community support. I have the support of the Attorney General Jerry Brown, 6 out of 7 current and past members of the Board of Supervisors, the Teamsters, the Sonoma County Alliance, the Sonoma County Farm Bureau, just to name a few. And I would appreciate your support as well. As I look into the future, I see that we still have much work to do, but together we can achieve so much, and we can continue to make this one of the safest counties in the state of California. I promise that as your district attorney, I will continue to work tirelessly to do the work that you elected me to do in 2002 and in 2006. And I will use my experience and love of this county to ensure that we still have the lifestyle that we enjoy today and tomorrow for our families and for our children. On June 8th, I would greatly appreciate your support, and I would greatly appreciate that you tell your friends and your neighbors. And please go to Passalacqua 2010 for more information. We're on Facebook, and I look forward to serving you for another 4 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ms. Ravitch.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out tonight and listening, and I hope that you heard a few things that will help you make the right decision on June 8th. I think it's important when you choose the next district attorney that you really look at what experience means. It means somebody who understands how to get the job done. It means somebody who has the broad support of many leaders in our community. Endorsements are nice, and endorsements mean a lot when they come from individuals that are involved in the criminal justice system. Police officer associations from Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, Cotati, Deputy Sheriff's Association, Healdsburg, all have endorsed my candidacy, as well as the sheriff and the chief of the Healdsburg Police Department. These individuals and associations have lost confidence with the district attorney's office, and that loss of confidence means they're not going to be working well to make sure that our community is safe. It's important to look at the fact that 7 out of 9 mayors, over 30 city council members, Supervisor Shirley Zane, who previously endorsed my opponent, withdrew her support and is now endorsing me. She's somebody who's worked hard to protect the rights of seniors for many years, and she feels I'd be the better candidate. A couple of days ago, I was endorsed by Senator Mark Leno. The endorsements just keep coming. It's phenomenal. You'd think I was the one running as the incumbent. What it says, ladies and gentlemen, is that those who know what's happening in the courthouse know that it's time for a change. We need somebody running that office who understands what the job of a prosecutor is, who understands how important it is to work with other associations and individuals to ensure that you are as safe as you can be. My record is proven, my outreach is well known, through many community-based organizations as well as individuals. Look at the endorsements and look at the person. Look at the qualifications each of us brings to the table. Again, let's go back to our records. Let's go back to everyone's record. Thank you.
So every election is important. Doesn't matter if it's local, state, federal. This is a democracy. It's not a spectator sport. So get out there and vote and encourage your friends and family to vote as well. Thank you for your interest. Until next time.